And I'm Matt Hanna.
And this is Horror Hour with the Hannas,
where we talk about all of your favorite scary movies.
And today we are joined by our friends at Haunted Atlas, Sarah and Erica. Hey guys.
Hello.
Hi. You guys might recognize Sarah because she's been on the podcast before representing Paranormal in Pennsylvania. But her and Erica are also the hosts of the new show Haunted Atlas, so we wanted to bring them back on. Can you tell us a little bit more about Haunted Atlas?
Yeah, so Haunted Atlas explores history and hauntings across the United States, and every 2 weeks we discuss a new haunted location.
And where can our listeners find you?
We are on wherever you get podcasts, really. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, etc. And we drop on Tuesdays. And social is Haunted US. We're part of the Haunted US team. So Haunted US is a website that is an atlas, for lack of a better term, of different haunted locations. So you can also read the history and haunts. You can see photos of various locations. And we fall under that Haunted US umbrella. So TikTok and Instagram is Haunted US.
Okay, Sarah, well, thank you guys for joining us today. We're excited to have you. And everyone, go check them out. So we brought them on here today to cover a movie that is one of my personal faves. We are covering George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
And we picked this movie because it is so important to history, and we thought that having like a history-themed podcast kind of made sense. So Night of the Living Dead, like Matt said, was directed, photographed, and edited by George Romero, and it's written by George Romero and John Russo, starring Dwayne Jones and Judith O'Dea. I don't know if I said her name right, but my bad. So the film had a budget of only $114,000, but it went on to gross $12 million domestically and $18 million internationally. So it ended up earning more than 250 times its budget, which makes this one of the most profitable film productions of all time.
And I'm not sure if you said it, but I believe it was released in 1968.
Yes.
Cool. So we didn't adjust for inflation or anything, but you get the gist.
I mean, that still makes it,
yes,
given its budget and
profitable.
what it made.
That's a lot of money.
Yes. Yeah. It's crazy, especially for a movie that came out in the 60s.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember, I mean, this invented the zombie as we know it, basically.
Spoilers for what I'm going to say,
oh, my
bitch.
Bad. Well, it's critical. I'll also say, if you look at the time, B movies and monster movies were like a bigger deal, and a lot of people were going to the theaters to see them. I think this one ends up being a little bit more than just a B movie or monster movie, but I'm sure that helps. Home release probably helps too.
Well, what's really fun about this is it actually premiered in Pittsburgh because it was filmed in Butler County right outside Pittsburgh.
And George A. Romero is from Pittsburgh.
He actually went to Carnegie Mellon.
There you go, about a mile from us. So, or really not even.
Well, we went to school,
neighbors.
You mean?
Yeah,
at Pitt, which is crazy. So that's also why I've always wanted to see this movie before I had seen it, because I was like, oh my god, it was filmed so close.
Mm-hmm.
But what made this super fun when it was released is that it was released shortly before the Motion Picture Association of America rating system started. So it didn't have a rating, and it was more explicitly violent and had a lot more gore than a lot of other films of the time. It was very groundbreaking in that way. So it led to a lot of controversy and negative reviews when it came out. And it was only later that it became a cult classic and is important to history as it is today.
It's kind of interesting to me that the profits were so high, but the reviews at the time were so negative.
I'm sure because it was so crazy and monumental that then people were like, okay, now I have to go see it.
Yeah.
So, and no ratings meant, again, families were taking their children to see this, which I read a historical review about it, where basically the reviewer said yeah, there were a bunch of children in here because back in the day you would take your kids to see monster movies, but they were very thrown off, and everyone started getting very solemn when all the characters start dying, as that was more uncommon. At the beginning, everyone was doing the normal cheering at the theater stuff, enjoying kind of some of the schlockiness, we might call it, and then all of a sudden it takes just a big turn going to the end of the movie. It I think like parents were taking their kids out.
Yeah, the ending of this movie, I can imagine like having your kids there and being like, oh.
Yeah, I don't want to jump ahead, but I was very surprised at the violence.
It really is phenomenal. But yeah, you're right. We'll get there.
Well, speaking of the violence, because the budget was so small, even for that time period, they had to get really creative with their special effects and props. So the blood, for example, was chocolate syrup, and the human flesh consisted of meat donated by a butcher shop.
Oh, I don't like that.
No.
Disgusting.
Especially because they're like biting into it in some scenes.
Yes. Like, that just sounds so gross. Uncooked meat, like, yum. But also, that is why the film was shot in black and white. Because of film, like, budget constraints.
Yeah, I was thinking that because 68 is like mostly past the black and white era. But I love this movie for it. I think it looks phenomenal in this color. And I guess that makes sense. Helps with the blood. Mm-hmm. Kind of helps you with everything. And were you guys surprised going in to see it in black and white? Like, were you prepared for that?
Yeah, it kind of I was surprised. It gave me Twilight Zone vibes.
That's a great comparison.
I actually didn't see it in black and white.
How did you see? Do you saw a colorized version?
Yeah.
Oh, you saw the restoration.
Available.
Yes, that was on. That was the one that I found on Amazon Prime.
That's fuck Amazon Prime. Fuck that.
Yeah, so they're
kind of crazy.
There's a restoration. I would definitely recommend not watching that one for the people out there, from my understanding and reading about it. But
yeah,
hopefully you watch the same movie and not the remake, because I think there is a remake.
Oh, yeah, listen, I have a whole story about that. So I started the actual 1968 version, and then I don't remember why, but I stopped it, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the wrong one. And then I started the 1990 remake, realized that it was the remake, but Amazon Prime labels it as being made in 1968. So that was confusing. And then I went back to the correct version.
But color.
But in color. Interesting. No, I've never seen it in color. I would say, well, I'll be interested to see if you have a different opinion on it because of the way it looked.
Well, the first scene, yeah, we'll get there.
Well, yeah, speaking of, this movie created a successful franchise, including 5 sequels that were released between 78 and 2009, all directed by Romero. But also, due to an error when titling the original film, it entered the public domain upon release. So there's tons of other adaptations and remakes.
There are like 2 timelines from my understanding, because there's Night of the Living Dead that then goes down the Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and then I don't know the other 2. But then there's also Return of the Living Dead, which is a sequel to Night of the Living Dead, but not the other ones. But Romero's is the Dawn, Day, and other ones.
Are they all in Pittsburgh?
The Dawn is at a mall in Pittsburgh. I think it was Monroeville Mall, and I'm not sure if that's one that's still there or not. And yeah, it's good. I'll say that. I don't think it's as good as this one, but it's maybe a little more viewer friendly, if that makes sense. I've never seen Day though, so I don't know. I've heard Day is also very good.
Well, check our socials, guys, because I will be posting content from the cemetery where this was filmed, Evans City Cemetery, because it is right near where we stay when we're out in Pittsburgh. So, getting more into the history aspect of the film, like Matt spoiled for us earlier, this film is known for essentially the creation of the modern fictional zombie. So originally, the roots may be traced back to the zombie in the Haitian voodoo religion. And Romero didn't actually ever use the word zombie in the film or its script. He referred to them as ghoul. But the term zombie was retroactively applied to the film, and the future of the zombie genre is all based off the characterization from this film.
I did think that was strange, because like even in the radio broadcasts in the movie, and the TV broadcasts, the fact that they say ghoul was so surprising to me. I wasn't sure if it was a pop culture thing, like zombie wasn't generally accepted. Do you know why he didn't use it? You said retroactive, but
So my understanding, and I don't know if you have it, is that word wasn't like popular lexicon yet.
Yes.
Like zombie was not what they were referred to, because zombie does come from the Haitian
voodoo.
Like
voodoo.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like I guess he took inspiration from that, but didn't just straight up use that word.
Huh. Yes, that was my understanding as well. And then it later, like, other people attributed that terminology.
They were like, "Oh, well, this is a zombie."
And
like,
I'm pretty sure zombie in that is also spelled differently. I think it's spelled without the E, but I could be wrong.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And so another thing I noticed that I think this movie gets misinterpreted to future zombie films is that in this movie, it's not the bite of a zombie that turns you into another ghoul or another zombie. It's dying that turns you into it. It just so happens that being bit by one creates such a bad infection that you die. And I feel like that immediately got misinterpreted for all subsequent zombie films, that it's just a bite turns you. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Yes, when they're talking about the young girl being sick in the basement, they don't say, oh, she's going to turn into a zombie. They say, who knows what those things carry? And I thought that was so interesting that they're worried about her illness and she just like progressively gets sicker. Spoiler alert, I guess. But she progressively gets sicker, but it's not actually like infecting her with a zombie virus, for lack of a better term.
I think it's kind of crazy, like, watching it in our day and age, because we obviously know what zombie lore has turned into. Like, if someone bites you, you become a zombie and whatnot in most zombie media. So watching this, you're like, okay, well, I know it's probably going to happen, but that wasn't the lore at the time yet.
And I almost prefer it this way. I really like the dark idea of the fact that the bite is just so infectious in a like medical way that you just die from the infection, and then after you die you rise, because anyone that also implies that anybody that dies during all this will rise, as we see at another point in the movie.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of cool, that idea, actually, because it's almost like darker than our current view of zombies, right? Because if a zombie apocalypse breaks out, according to today's lore, you just avoid a bite and you're okay. But in this movie, that's not the case. It's like, how do you even stop something like that?
Yeah, you better be prepared when someone dies to get them like away from you, right?
Yeah.
And you better not kill anybody.
Right.
Well, do we have any more facts, Hannah?
I have more history.
More history?
I know, it's crazy. So the lead role wasn't written with a person in color, with a black actor in mind. Like, at the time, most leading gentlemen were white, so that was kind of the plan. But then he ended up casting a black actor, Dwayne Jones, for the lead as Ben. And so Romero didn't change the script at all to reflect that. But it's very interesting for the time, because at this point, very few black actors played leading roles. And the rare exceptions at the time where there were black leading men, a lot of times, to my understanding, they were written still as subservient to other characters or white men to make those characters more palatable and accessible to white people. So the fact that he did not change this character's characteristics and he is the ultimate hero of the film is monumental.
That's really interesting that he didn't modify the script at all. I was wondering, in certain points of the film, like where they finally come up from the cellar, I was wondering if the harsh reaction was because of, skin color. But hearing that he didn't change the script at all makes it even more interesting to me.
I think this casting is just actually so awesome, and it helps that the guy, how do you say his name? It's Dwayne.
I'm pretty sure it's Dwayne.
Just actually so good, at least in my opinion. I think he like knocks this role out of the park. I also wanted to comment that I know that it's still a modern issue that a lot of directors actually struggle with lighting black actors, because there are different ways you need to light them because of skin color. And no issue from George Romero in this movie. He looks fantastic throughout the whole movie. Like, I thought that's a huge point in this movie that I really like, is the way it's lit. And I think that it's neat to see that how much like he nailed that, especially
in the 60s. Yeah.
In 68 and given that as like a different type of challenge, basically. So
Yeah.
And then finally, just to sum up the history section, in 1999, the Library of Congress registered this film to the National Film Registry as a film deemed, quote, historically, culturally, or aesthetically important.
Well, you know how I feel about that. That's definitely necessary, and surprised it wasn't done sooner.
Yeah, I don't know how that worked when they started doing that. So who knows if that's late or early or question mark.
So that's it for history?
Yeah, that's
a lot of history. Do we have any comments from the history podcast?
This isn't about history. It's more about geography, but I'm going to lump it into the section. It was so cool that the areas described in the film are based around real Pittsburgh areas. That was something that I think was really, really cool because anybody from the area could, relate to that. Or even if you're just Googling it, because sometimes when I watch horror movies, I do that thinking, is this actually real? But everything was real when they were talking about like the safe houses to go to, etc. So not history, but I think the geography aspect was cool.
Not just that, they worked alongside the actual Pittsburgh like news networks. I'm pretty sure they used real anchors for some of those scenes.
I did not know that.
I remember when at the end of the movie, it basically says like working in conjunction with WTAE or whatever it is with Pittsburgh. And then Sarah, you're right. They named like Johnstown and Butler and all the areas.
Yeah.
Probably Cranberry,
Yeah, it was so cool to me. It makes it so accurate.
Yeah, it really has that feel too. And being from Pittsburgh, there are a lot of things in it that I was like, yeah, this is Pittsburgh. Like the inside of the house feels like what my grandparents' house looked like. And there's a lot in there that I'm like, it has a Pittsburgh feel. The people too. Right.
Yes.
Although I'll say, and I watched this a couple weeks ago, I was like amazed at how a lot of these accents don't exist anymore.
I think that's kind of, we noticed that in general. And I think that's why people were critical of a newer release this year, Late Night with the Devil, because they were like, they don't have the right accents. They don't have the right voice. And it's like, well, that accent doesn't exist anymore. So that's why.
Got to bring it back. I love it.
Me too. I love the sound.
Well, we can bring the transatlantic accent back because I'm assuming that's what that's considered. Everyone in Hollywood sounded like that during this time, it seems like. Okay, so this is the first time you guys ever saw this, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and so I'll say I've seen this for the first time. I saw it last year, surprisingly, and then I watched it again this year for Halloween. And I think, Hannah, you're the same, correct?
Yes. We actually watched it because friend of the pod, Matt Dalton, who's been on many episodes, was in a Night of the Living Dead musical, so we all watched it together.
That's so fun.
Yeah. It was funny how that's what got us to watch this monumental piece of film history.
Which I feel bad that it was a blind spot for me because I'd like seen parts, and I'd actually seen Dawn of the Dead before I saw this. But did you have any expectations going in, or did you know anything about it?
I did not know anything as someone who does not watch horror movies. So I had an expectation that this was going to be terrifying. And I was thankfully proven wrong.
Yeah, not so much terrifying, but it's scary in different ways. But sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I knew it wasn't going to be terrifying because I know that Hannah knows that you don't like scary movies. So she wouldn't give us something truly, truly scary. But I kind of expected it just to be like whatever. It's a 60s movie. I feel like sometimes old media doesn't resonate as well. There are, of course, exceptions like The Exorcist that are, going to withstand the test of time. But I thought, oh, maybe I'll watch it and it won't be that interesting. But I was actually really interested in trying to break down in my head how things were made and done. It was cool.
That makes me very happy because I feel like very similarly that early on, this movie kind of like locks you in and you're not exactly sure why. Like it's doing something.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of love the opening scene. Like,
they're coming to get you, Barbara.
Yeah, like it's so funny. He says they're coming to get you, Barbara, and then someone actually comes and gets her. And he was just joking. Like I was immediately locked in.
Yes. I would say, I don't know if this is because I was watching it in color, but that first scene was so funny to me because it was just like people randomly running around on screen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think if it had been in black and white, it would have set the scene more.
I think you got to go back then and then come back to us.
I do think the black and white fits the tone of the movie really well.
I think Sarah hit the nail on the head that it feels more Twilight Zone like, which is like maybe what this should feel like.
Yeah.
It is sci-fi in some ways, especially the fact that the ghouls are coming from a Venus probe or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, that was
it's very silly.
I will say though, so that opening scene, I think, like I said, locks me in, and then on second watch, I realized like, oh, this guy's in a suit that comes after them, the guy that's coming to get them. Oh shit, he was a dead body in the cemetery that dug out of that, right, and went and got them. That's why he's in like dress clothes, I think. And like on that second watch,
that could explain why it seems like, I don't know what it was like in the 60s, but it kind of gives the feel like they're in the middle of nowhere, and yet there are how many fucking bodies surrounding that house. So it would make sense if they were just coming from the graves.
And it immediately is just like gives you this like icky feeling. And maybe I think right off the bat also Johnny getting his head smashed on a like grave is way more impactful than you should expect it to be, even from the way it looks. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is actually like,
well, and then that motherfucker breaks through her car window with a rock.
Good point.
Or a brick.
Yeah.
So, but either way, expectations were, we don't know, but we were, like I said, locked in. You guys seem to have enjoyed, at least from the beginning.
Yes.
So, okay. So I guess, do we do 15-second summaries now, or am I missing something?
We can do 15-second summaries.
Let's do that, and we'll do summaries, and then we'll talk about whether we liked it or not, what we liked, all that good normal horror hour with the Hanna stuff. So who wants to go first with 15-second summaries?
I can go first. I was trying not to think too much about this today, but like have something prepped in the back of my mind.
I didn't think about it at all until right now. So, all right, are you ready? Go.
Siblings visit their mom's grave or dad's grave, and suddenly zombies appear. Brother dies, and sister hides in house where she meets other locals, and they hide from zombies, trying to survive.
There we go. I'd say that covers everything. Erica, do you want to go next?
Yes, I'll give it a go.
All right. I got you. Ready, go.
Okay, a group of people find themselves in the middle of nowhere in a house while undetermined circumstances are going on around them with the dead.
That's a good summary.
We'll take it.
So brave of you guys to go first.
I'll go last.
I loved it.
I'll make it hard on myself.
Okay.
Go. Ready, go.
A group of people are fighting zombies in a film that essentially is an allegory for the selfishness of American society and the Cold War.
Hey, that's one way you can take it. Well, we'll get to that because I think you're right.
Yeah, I have a lot to say for themes. All right, Matthew.
I'm ready.
Go.
Yeah, so like people start rising from the dead and eating other people, and our characters are all there trying to survive, but they don't. Unfortunately.
The end of this movie is fucked up.
Okay, I will read full plot description, so Sarah and Erica, bear with me.
Time to zone out.
Zone out. Yeah, go get a water break, do whatever you need to do. But this is for everyone listening. I hope everyone's seen this movie, and if you haven't, go watch it. It's important.
But give us the refresher. Refresher.
Yep. Oh, refresher.
On the nose.
Okay. So here we go. Siblings Barbara and Johnny drive to a cemetery in rural Pennsylvania to visit their father's grave, where a pale man in a tattered suit kills Johnny and attacks Barbara. She flees to a nearby farmhouse but finds the resident's corpse lying half-eaten on the stairs. A growing horde of ghouls soon surrounds the house as a stranger, Ben, arrives. After driving back several ghouls, he boards the windows and doors. While searching the home for supplies, he locates a rifle. A nearly catatonic Barbara is surprised to find people already taking shelter in the home's cellar. Harry, his wife Helen, and their young daughter Karen fled there after a group of ghouls overturned their car and bit Karen on the arm, leaving her ill. A couple, Tom and Judy, took shelter after hearing an emergency broadcast about sirens of brutal killings. Tom and Ben secure the farmhouse while Harry protests that it's unsafe above ground before he returns to the cellar. Ghouls continue to besiege the farmhouse in increasing numbers. The refugees listen to the radio and television reports of an army of cannibalistic corpses committing mass murder across the country. Various rescue centers offer refugee and safety, and scientists theorize that radiation from an exploding space probe returning from Venus caused the reanimations. Ben devises a plan to obtain medical supplies for Karen and transport the group to a rescue center by refueling his truck at a pump on the farm. Ben, Tom, and Judy drive there together, holding the ghouls off with torches and Molotov cocktails. However, the gas from the pump spills and causes the truck to catch fire and explode, killing Tom and Judy. Ben returns and breaks down the door when Harry does not let him in. The remaining survivors attempt to figure a way out. They pause their discussion to watch the 3 a.m. news update until the power cuts out. The ghouls soon break through the doors and windows of the unlit home. In the chaos, Harry grabs Ben's gun but is disarmed and shot by Ben. Harry stags down to the cellar and dies next to his daughter. Karen becomes a ghoul and eats her father's remains, then stabs her mother to death. Barbara tries to help Ben keep the ghouls out, but a reanimated Johnny drags her away. As the horde breaks in, Ben takes refuge in the cellar. In the morning, an armed posse arrives to dispatch the remaining ghouls. Awoken by their gunfire and sirens, Ben emerges from the cellar, but they shoot him, mistaking Ben for a ghoul. His body is then thrown onto a bonfire and burned with the rest.
Ugh.
And that's a very bleak ending, and I love it.
Iconic.
Yeah.
So, Sarah and Erica, did you like this movie?
I did. I really did, actually. I felt like there was a lot of interesting things to consider. Like, I know we do themes towards the end, but I liked some of the themes, and some of the scenes were just so outlandish to me. I loved it.
I also really enjoyed this. I think my issue with horror movies is that I'm always trying to anticipate the jump scares, and they're so popular in like current movies that it's hard for me to sit through. This movie was scary, and it was sort of surreal and eerie, and so it made me feel the things that you should feel when you're watching a horror movie, but it didn't like make me so tense that I felt like I couldn't keep watching it.
I love that. I get it.
Fists are in the air because I'm so excited you guys liked it, because I was a little worried, because I do think for a first-time viewer it can be a little slow, and I'm pumped you liked it, because I think this is like one of the best horror movies ever made, probably the best zombie movie ever made, and it was the first one to do it, but we can get to that discussion later. So very, very excited you guys liked it, because this was my pick. So Hannah, tell me what you are feeling.
I mean, I obviously think it is monumental, and thinking about the movie, like, you can do so much analysis of this movie. If I actually sat down to write a scholarly essay on this movie, I'm sure I could take it in like 400 different directions, and I love that. Like, when we talk about themes, I'm gonna go into like 3, but just the fact that a movie could get you thinking so much, like, obviously some movies do that, some movies don't, and I think whenever I have the opportunity to do that, and I think the themes are actually like very well developed, we stand. And I think this movie looks great. I think a lot of times you like, at least me, because I have a lot of blind spots before the 90s, I'll like think back to old movies and be like, it's gonna look bad, I don't want to watch it. And this movie just like fucking looks incredible. It's like, especially for the time, but even now, like you said, like, it's lit so well that there's no reason to not like, unless you get easily distracted. Then like, yeah, I could see the pacing being a problem.
So 2 things that you guys said that I want us to dive into more. One of them is Hannah saying that the movie's gorgeous, and the other one is what Erica said about it being scary. So let's talk about the way this looks first, and then we'll come back to it being scary.
Matt, I love that you're actually leading discussion today. Normally it's me, but you're so hype.
I just think this movie, I think there's a lot to say. So,
okay, yeah, let's talk about how
I will first say that it is a shame that movies don't look like this anymore. I think the reason they do is because they were shooting on film, lighting was so important, and there was so much pre-prep that went in. I also think you had a guy basically just like shooting this by himself to some degree, that he really like went all out to get this looking the way he wanted it to look. Romero, yes. Yeah. So I say a guy. Clearly he has an eye as well. But I will say, like, you were talking about old movies. There are so many old movies that look like this. And I feel like there are people out there like, I don't really watch anything pre-90s. And I'm like, your head will explode if you put on Night of the Living Dead. Even just Night of the Living Dead, which is like was supposed to maybe be like a B film, right? Is beautiful looking. So that's for everyone else out there. Watch old movies. But so I'll throw it to you, Sarah and Erica over there. Like, anything you were particularly impressed by with the way this looked?
I think my thought actually has a little bit to do with it being scary. I genuinely thought it was so uncomfortable watching the characters bite into like the human organs. The way that they made that look, even in the 1960s, was like incredibly well done and made me nauseous a little bit.
Practical effects.
See, you're getting me on the age thing again, and it looks good because we are more willing to have suspension of disbelief when something is tangible. So like there are multiple times throughout this movie where they use very good practical effects, and my suspension of disbelief completely works. Whereas when we are in these perfect 4K resolutions with like CGI, if it looks a little bit uncanny or weightless, like my brain takes me out of it. And I completely agree. Like those bite effects, everything about it's great because it is real.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point. I think another effects overall in this movie that make it scary really work. And I even think another one that's kind of silly, but it works really well is when the car explodes and the screen just goes white.
Yes.
And I was like, this is like goofy as hell, but like, why am I like upset? You know, it's working.
Yeah.
And even how they play with the characters' reactions and lighting the characters for their reactions to that, you know, it's all really obviously well thought out.
It's crazy what you could do when your time constraints weren't as a big of a deal and, you know, people weren't rushing and you weren't making most of your decisions in post-production. You know, like everything was planned. It's planning.
Planning is important.
That's the number one thing movies need to do more of is planning.
Stop procrastinating, folks. That's the lesson.
Stop making decisions that you'll fix it in post. This is at Marvel. A lot of my complaints go towards Marvel.
I know, honey.
But this is something they do.
Exactly
It's something that they've normalized and like, well, we'll just decide what this gun looks like after the fact. And it's like, well, that fucks up all your lighting. It messes up so many different things. So, and it costs more. They think it'll cost less, but
at the Samuel L. Jackson in whatever Marvel that was, where his
I don't
gun
even know
is
what that
totally
was.
different in post.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's insane. Like, why are we doing things this way? I'll jump in more on like why it's scary, and
Yes.
I feel like I actually struggle to put it into words. I think part of it's the music, and I think probably a lot of it does have to do with the way it looks. But there's something about this movie that even from the beginning is very like eerie, and like it really like I think pulls you in with this sense of like overwhelming dread.
Well, I think because they're all so isolated, and like for so much of this movie, it's two people, and it feels like they're in the middle of nowhere in this black and white, like drabby landscape. I mean, that's because it's filmed like that, but I think all of that like kind of contributes to that overall mood.
I agree. I'm trying to think about what else like really like brings me down. And maybe it is the slowness helps too. It really lets us like sit with the predicament.
Yeah, I think that's what it was for me is it goes so fast when it does get into the horror. Like even in that opening scene, if we look at it in and of a story on its own, it's like, haha, they're gonna come to get you. Oh wow, they actually did. Okay, we're kicking off. And like you said, that grips you in. But that's kind of how they treat the horror throughout the film. Like once the horror arrives, it is nonstop, which I really like. And it just gets more and more intense. And like the eating of the organs, or when they're like stabbing the corpse and the chocolate sauce blood is spraying, you know, it doesn't back down from it once it starts. And I think that really contributes to it.
I also think there's a lot to say about these people being isolated with such a large looming threat that they don't understand. Like, we don't actually get what's going on, and they're only getting so much information from the radio broadcast. And even the family downstairs didn't even know that there was a radio broadcast for so much of the time. And then they're looking out the window with these hordes of them, essentially, at that point. Like, there's probably 30 out the window. And it's just like, how do we beat this unknown enemy with, like, 3 of us?
Yeah, I was wondering, are you guys, like, team stay at the house or team go to the safety center? And are you team cellar or team first floor?
I'm team. I'll do whatever Ben tells me.
Yeah.
I trust that dude with my life.
I'm team, like, whatever that old white man says, fuck that.
Yeah, he sucks.
That's honestly the whole movie. I was like, I don't know if I agree with Ben, but I agree with Ben because this white man's really annoying the fuck out of me. And, like, this grouchy old bitch is lying. Like, he knew that they were there, and he's been lying about whether he heard them or not. And then he basically accidentally admits that he did hear them, and then came up with an excuse for why he didn't intervene. And I was like, absolutely fuck this, John. Like, Ben,
Right.
You're right. Whatever you say.
He's like the ultimate individualist, like me and my family, and that's all that matters. And in this situation, that is not how you survive one of these events.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, let's go in the cellar where there's only one way out. Like, what?
That's the part that's crazy, is there's literally one way out, so you're fucked. If they come in, that's the door they're coming in through. You can't get back out that door. So good work, sir.
So yeah, I'm like I said, team whatever Ben wants me to do. But I will say, I think it also depends on the zombie type, which I want to chat a little bit about. I think it goes with this idea and also with why it's scary. I really like that these zombies are very slow, but very strong, because it's like you can win, right? You can fight. There are ways you can game plan around them, which I think is like pretty exciting for these, but it's like they still are inevitable. They still move slowly, but they're not going to stop moving. And I think that really like adds to the dread. And I don't think we ever need to go to fast zombies ever again. I think slow zombies, way to go.
I don't know. The World War Z zombies do scare me.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that book. I think I'm going to wait. I'm going to talk about slow zombies again when we get to themes. So I'm going to hold off for now. But I will say I'm team go to that station for that reason, is you can game plan around them. But the thing that's going to get in your way is getting overwhelmed or making your own mistake, which our crew does by blowing themselves up.
Shooting at a gas pump is insane behavior. Insane.
Yeah.
Well, never said these guys were all that smart, but except for Ben.
I'm
giving
one
Ben.
of them is smart. What else did we think that this movie did well that is not theme related?
I think it did a really good job of establishing the characters without feeling like it's pandering or, unnecessarily developing them. It was very quick characterization of of these people, and they all kind of had clear roles and how they fit in. Like the one guy, the cellar guy, like he's clearly, the antagonist of the house if you look at it on its own. So I think that the characterization happening so quickly was really good. Even establishing Barbara as kind of like the helpless female that is shell-shocked. It all happens really quickly, and it doesn't feel like they waste time on that.
As a side note, can we just talk about Ben immediately knocking Barbara out so we can go about his house chores? He's like, you're being annoying, and I'm just trying to get some shit done and save your life, girly. So hold on.
Yes. I wanted to say first that I think Sarah made a great point about that.
Yes,
that I hadn't thought about. Like, it's crazy how easy it can be. Like, you don't have to do much. You just a little bit of effort. Secondly, what you said, Hannah, I can't help but agree with Ben. She needed a little wake up call, and if it took a little, just little slap around to wake her up, in this situation.
And by wake her up, you mean knock her out?
He knocked her out.
Yeah.
It seemed to know she was.
I think that was good timing for it, because at that point you're like getting very drained by her being useless. So for just from a writing standpoint, you're like, oh, thank God, Ben, thank God.
It's so messed up, but at the same time, like she was not okay and not doing well. I feel bad.
I would need this as well.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to get knocked out real quick, and then
reset.
It is kind of crazy though that they just took their like hero and was like, he's just gonna punch a woman in the face.
That is my one thing, is I was like, I don't know how I feel about the hero being the one that knocks her out, but also like he kind of had to.
He kind of had to. Yeah, I know. I feel bad saying that, but it is funny. He kind of, I don't know what he was supposed to do.
I was like wondering if like in that day and age, if they were like used the fact that it was a black man hitting a white woman in the face to make some sort of like pissy judgment or something.
I don't think so. The vibe I'm getting from it is that he is the hero. However, given the circumstances, like you can't just be a hero to survive.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think they're kind of setting up, right? They're telling you right off the bat, like this is not a hero versus monsters like movie.
Oh, 100%.
Like this is a not drab's not the right word. It is a dreary and like upsetting film, and you find that out by the end. Okay. Anything else we want to say we liked?
I think there's a couple of reveals in this that take a really long time, and I think when they finally come up is pretty fantastic. Like, it takes a while for us to realize that someone's in the basement, and then it's just like this holy shit situation of like, there were people there that whole fucking time. And then I just think the pacing of it is really well done with when those reveals happen. And then the reveal, like the whole time you're kind of wondering about the kid. And again, like in this day and age, we're like, okay, she's going to turn, but when's it going to happen? But I can imagine even then, like, the fact that it happens so late in the movie, but at this pivotal time, that this is just not the moment for this to be happening.
And when it happens, she's
great.
eating her dad.
Yeah.
Well, he deserved it too. So I was like, yay, but no, but yay.
And mom walks in on it and she's like confused. And I'm sure, because I don't think we as an audience at that point know that if you kill someone alive currently, they will turn.
Yeah.
So Erica, I'm sorry, you had something else to add?
Oh, yes. We sort of touched on this earlier, but I really enjoyed kind of the bleakness of it. I thought them, like I said earlier, kind of setting this up so we don't really know how a cure can happen or like how we prevent the dead from turning into this was really cool. And I think the ending of him not making it, like you kind of have hope for maybe 2 minutes and then it's just shot. Literally.
Oh,
this is the cruelest like ending to a movie I think I've seen in a long while. And I've seen some in cruel in a way that works. I've seen plenty of cruel endings that I think like don't really work. This one I think completely fits everything this movie's going for, and it's like such a punch in the face to the audience.
It's a massive punch in the face, and it's also just like thematically so important too.
To then also have like photos of them basically like dragging the body around with the other corpses, and the movie ends, the credits ends with just like a big bonfire. And I think it's another interesting implication that like this was a very survivable event, right? It's clear that this posse is going around, at least in the rural areas, and cleaning everything up, which I think is very different from a lot of zombie movies. I think things change once you get to dawn and day, but in this one, it's like, okay, like this was maybe a one-time thing.
So is there anything we didn't like? I kind of figure this discussion will be short. I know your answer is no, Matt.
My answer is no, and I'm excited to discuss what other people didn't like, to tell them why they should have liked it.
Oh. No, my only thing was in the beginning, maybe this was just me, I didn't get that Barbara was catatonic. So I was like just annoyed at her until I realized, oh, she's traumatized. But I thought at the beginning, maybe it was just me and I didn't pick up on it, but I was just like, what is she doing?
I know, and I could see people who just like have no understanding of mental health whatsoever, and like who wouldn't know the word catatonic would watch this movie and be like, what the actual fuck? But like, obviously we understand trauma, so it like, it tracks.
Do you think there's actually is this a good representation of like what real shock looks like, or real like catatonic state from a traumatic event looks like?
Oh, she's like, I mean, I think her portrayal of being catatonic feels pretty spot on.
Really?
Like,
so I don't think I've seen another movie do it like this, and that's why it almost feels weird to us. Maybe it's because it's actually like
where she
more
just
correct.
Like absolutely
she went fully nonverbal like on him.
Focus, talk, whatever.
She could barely like walk by herself.
And see, that's when I realized it, because I think that, again, maybe it's not realistic, I don't know, but that's when I picked up, oh, she's traumatized. When she was walking around the house, I don't know if that's like totally accurate to someone who's catatonic, like in the beginning.
I've never had a client or anything that was actively catatonic, but I know for myself, when I've had, that's not normally something I've experienced, but I had like once or twice where I was just like so depressed that I was like, all I can do is move from the sofa to the bed And like, I feel like I need help to do that. And I just feel like I can't fucking talk. And if I do speak, I'm going to say like 3 words and that's going to be just absolutely exhausting. So like putting myself in that situation, I'm like, yeah, I've been there, girl.
She was like full dissociation, almost like just denying reality around her. And that's what it seems like.
And even if it is exaggerated, it's getting the point across. So I'm chill either way.
And I would say the performance really works for me too. Like she is annoying, but also at the same time, you're like, she is not okay.
Yeah. And then for it to be her brother who kills her is just
that was sad.
Yeah.
Right after she like basically like kind of comes to and is like, wait, okay, like I can be of help here, and then immediately sees her brother and freezes up.
Yeah.
That is one of the scariest scenes for me, I think, is just her being pulled into the horde and you just know, okay, well, she's going to get 8. Sarah, anything you want to complain about?
I don't think so. I really liked it, from the lighting to the music to the character development to the plot, pacing. I liked it.
Let's go. We're in the same boat here.
Love.
And if I don't have anything to complain about, do you, Hannah? Because I want to, before we get to themes, I have one more thing I want to talk about.
I could see the beginning of the film, like once they get into the house while he's kind of doing the house prepping. And then before the family comes up from the basement, I could see people being like, oh, that's slow. But I also think that everything they're doing in that time frame is significant and is kind of doing some world building about what the zombies can or cannot tolerate and like how to protect yourself. So even though I was very tired when I watched this, so that part of the movie was a little hard for me, I'm also like, it is significant and important world building, so I can talk myself out of that.
It's because we're TikTok brained.
Well, it's because I
audiences
was really tired and I texted you as I was watching it saying I need a nap after this. So that's actually what I would attribute it to.
I will say for those out there who haven't seen it, when I came home to Hannah watching it, immediately I was like, I kept like coming back to the TV. I was supposed to be working on something else and I was like, I need to watch it. And Hannah was looking pretty sleepy. But once that scene came around where they do the Molotovs and on, she was like, this movie's so good. I remember her being like, this ending. She's like, this ending is just like everything from that point on is just such a ride. So she was loving it. So definitely we recommend. And for those who have the TikTok brain, just make it. You can make it through. I promise.
So let's move into themes.
Wait, no. There was the one thing I wanted to say. We need to talk about zombies just for a little. We talked about it a little bit. We need to talk about how this created the zombie.
We did.
I know, but I wanted to, with everyone to see, like, is there anything that we got from these zombies that we were surprised by that like was different things? I mean, this movie, as it goes on with the news reports, is basically just telling us and setting the like scene for what zombies are. Was there anything that surprised you guys from that standpoint?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, never mind then. We got it.
Were you surprised?
No, I'm just saying, like, I think the news reports are really interesting because at first, like, we don't know they're eating people. And it's like, he basically set
funny.
He basically set all of the groundwork for what a zombie is in those news reports in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, that blows my mind a little bit, but it's like every little thing that we know, it's like, oh, there it was. Like, it's because, and we learned little bits. It's like, oh, they're eating each other. Oh, they're actually like reanimated dead. Oh, you have to take off the head, right? That they tell you later, like if you bash the brains in, that can separate. Like they kind of explain everything. And I was fascinated by that. But so I guess I just needed to say it and then we can go to themes.
Okay. I would like to get started with themes because I have a lot to say. So the first thing that I just like very immediately noticed on this rewatch, and I have brought it up earlier, was just about how individualistic American society is and how selfish we are. I think obviously Ben is not selfish because he immediately is hopping in here trying to save everybody, but everyone else doesn't. So Harry, I believe, is the old white man in the basement, just like immediately is lying about whether they could hear anything or not, admits finally that he did hear them, but he didn't intervene, and he had so many excuses as to why he didn't help. And then you realize that there were other people in the basement too, and they just like all try to like do their best to survive, which I understand, but they were so unwilling to help other people, knowing that there were people upstairs who were alive. And that just feels so American to me, to like not care to help other people. And then you kind of think that everybody but Harry has kind of decided, okay, that's shitty. We should actually like work together. But then the younger couple, I think it's Tom and Judy, have essentially the same discussion. Judy is like, why do you have to be the one to move the truck? And Tom has to be like, because I'm the only one who knows how. Ben doesn't know. So like, I have to do this. And he's willing to do it. And she really only goes along with him because like, that's her partner. Like, she wouldn't have done it if it weren't for him actually getting on board with the plan of helping other people and working together. So I think that that is very standout. And then we have our only survivor is Ben, but he ends up being killed. And I think like he's killed because he's alone. And I think that's like representative of like, you can't do everything alone. Like, even though he survived the worst of it, he still gets it because being alone is no bueno.
That's kind of a theme that I had too, that I wrote down. Like, autonomy in a crisis like this, what really matters for survival, I think is a cool theme that they explore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like distrust in others during a crisis.
Yeah.
I think that's, I think you hit the nail on the head with that one.
Nothing to add?
No, I think you nailed that. I know you have a couple, and I have one that you don't have. So,
all right, go ahead.
Okay, so my big one is that the original slow zombie is just like the manifestation of death and our fear of death, and how it basically just slowly is always like coming for us, right? Like, we can't avoid death. It's always there. We can do things to avoid it for as long as we can, but like, it's an inevitability. And I feel like that's what the zombie as a monster is supposed to represent.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I said I wanted to bring up the slow versus fast thing again. I think that a fast zombie takes away from that theme completely.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for this quote from Simon Pegg, who was very famous. He had a Guardian article where he talked about this. I want to read part of his quote because he did Shaun of the Dead and all this stuff. And he said, something that he hated is that zombies don't run. He said, I know it's absurd to debate the rules of a reality that do not exist, but this genuinely irks me. You cannot kill a vampire with an MDF stake. Werewolves can't fly. Zombies do not run. It's a misconception, a bastardization that diminishes a classic movie monster. The best Phantasmagoria uses reality to render the inconceivable conceivable. The speedy zombie seems implausible to me, even within the fantastic realms that it inhabits. A biological agent, I'll buy. Some sort of virus, sure, why not? But death is a disability, not a superpower. It's hard to run with a cold, let alone with the most debilitating malady of them all. And so he said, more significantly, the fast zombie is bereft of poetic subtlety. As a monster from the id, zombies win out over vampires and werewolves when it comes to the title of most poetic metaphorical monster, where their pointy-toothed cousins are all about sex and bestial savagery. The zombie trumps all by personifying our deepest fear, death. Zombies are our destiny writ large, slow and steady in their approach, weak, clumsy, often absurd. The zombies relentlessly close in, unstoppable, intractable.
All right, Simon.
Sorry,
Pegg.
I had to. He just nailed
boy.
it, so I don't think I can say much more than that. But I think like he is 100% right. Like that might be where the eeriness and the fear comes from. Is it that we are facing this monster we're facing is our reality, right? Like this is us. This is what eventually, when we get old and slow and more decrepit, and then we eventually die, like this. That's what we're running from, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And even just like the fear of death of this thing coming at you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This thing that's coming at you, right? Usually in horror movies or any sort of creature that has these tropes, Matt, you're right. It is like very fast, you know? And I think something coming towards you slowly, but as you realize and you start to realize that you're not getting out of this, that's also terrifying.
There's time to actually grieve that you're going to die.
And that's death.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's, and then maybe we should, like maybe we need to always be kind of grieving, or I mean we are, right? We're always grieving our age and our march towards inevitable death, right?
Well, to bring up the movie that we will have covered a few weeks ago at the point of this release, Heretic is very much about religion, and we talked about it in that episode, how part of the purpose of religion is to explain what happens when we die, because this is such like a common fear for all of us, is what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll rise from the grave and eat more people. I don't know.
Perhaps.
That's kind of like a theme that I wrote down, of not disrespecting death / the dead, because I know it's the radiation that sets off the whole cascade of these zombies, but it really feels like the brother in the first scene disrespecting the dead, like, brings this on. It's karma. They're talking about how they don't want to be making this trip to the cemetery. Then he's mocking the dead and his sister, and then the dead rise. And so I think it is saying, like, take it seriously, don't disrespect the dead or death, etc. So kind of along the lines of what you're saying, Matt, like, it's coming.
I think, yeah, I was going to say, I think it does really fall back into that it's like, it's the most primal fear we have, right? It is, there is not a greater fear that I think people have than the fear of, like, not existing anymore. And I think you're right. Yeah, we should respect that, right? We should be, maybe we don't need to be fearful, but we should be aware. I think I like your point. It is funny how it feels like he basically just causes it all to happen.
Yeah, he's really just like, fuck that, John, and then boom.
But we get even more meta with it. That's like another example of the fear of death, is like, instead of acknowledging this inevitable fact, we're trying to blame it on something else. We're trying to, like, make sense of it. And there is nothing to make sense of. It is just a fact, right? Very cool movie. Yes, it gets me excited.
So Sarah, you had mentioned the radiation, which ties me to how this movie is very reflective of Cold War times, which is, when this movie was released, was during the Cold War. So when we just think about, like, the mysterious radiation, that very much taps into the fear of the time about nuclear bombs and nuclear fallout. So, like, that alone is very representative of fears at the time.
I didn't think about that at all. And that probably ties into your initial one of, like, thinking, like, a little bit of McCarthyism and not trusting your neighbor.
Yup.
It goes right into our Cold War fears. There we go.
And then the zombies are very much the other, or that, like, mysterious enemy that we don't quite understand. And I feel like during the Cold War, it was just this, like, very broad, faceless enemy. Something else, I kind of, like, looked up a little bit more about this, and some of what I was reading, someone said the film setting in a rural farmhouse where the characters must barricade themselves against the ongoing threat symbolizes the feeling of isolation and paranoia that was prevalent during the Cold War. And then additionally, there's the theme of government inaction, which was a fear during the Cold War of, like, they don't come and save them. All of these people in this house die, and even the one person who is alive, they then kill because the government is useless. So all of that, very timely. And timely now.
Yeah, I think it definitely hits different post pandemic that we lived through. Yeah. As most movies do.
Yeah.
There's always a new reading I have on them.
Well, what was the Argentinian film? When Evil Lurks.
Yeah.
Like that, coming out post-pandemic and, like, having experienced the pandemic and then watching that movie, you're like, oh, I feel this, and I feel this hard.
This one's even funnier when all you can really do is they sit in front of the TV and wait to be told what they can do next, which is, like, basically what we had to do for a year. It was just like, all right, what's this week going to bring?
Yep.
As Bill Burr, so he's like, masks this week? He said, I watch the news every 2 weeks. Masks, no masks. He was just wait. He was just like, if they tell me masks, I wear the masks. And then next 2 weeks, you come back, find out if it was time to take it off or not. Well,
I have one more. Okay, so this is my last, like, major point I was going to make. And I think this one is really interesting, given that the character was originally written not with race in mind. But I do think that it ends up being very significant that we do have a Black protagonist who is then killed by a massive group of white men. during a time of a lot of civil unrest and a lot of violence directed at the Black community, because this was at the height of the civil rights movement.
That is interesting, and I had not thought about that. And funnily enough, because I think he did not write it with a Black man in mind.
No, he did not.
I think that he was just like, this is how I wrote it. I'm not going to change it just because I'm concerned about like what that outlook can be. Because I don't think that there was any intent with that from a filmmaking
I don't
standpoint.
think there was either.
But it is an interesting
It is very,
thing to look.
very significant, actually, especially, again, like what we've lived through in the last 4 years. Obviously, this has been an ongoing problem. I don't want to act like this is a new issue, but thinking through 2020 and the prevalence of the Black Lives Matter marches and everything, because we had so many prime examples in the news of people of color being murdered by the police, and how much work obviously needs to be done to that institution. Then seeing this movie where this Black man is murdered by the equivalent of the white rural police is pretty significant and stark and depressing.
Yeah, no, you make good points. I don't know if I can add much to that.
Yeah, agreed. Like I said earlier, the ending of the movie is just so dark.
It's bleak as fuck.
Difference in this situation, though, there's always a stereotype that a Black character is the first to die in a horror movie. In this one, he does die, but he made it the whole way. And like, clearly that stereotype must have happened post 1968, considering this is like a very early, I don't want to call it contemporary, but early horror movie post the like monster movie era.
Well, Black characters in media has definitely changed over time, as we are aware. I actually found this book. I just pulled up like my reading list on one of the apps that I was on, and I guess that book got removed from the app that I was reading it on. But there was a book that I was basically reading that was about like the history of Black characters in horrors.
Oh, that's really cool.
And I really need to get back into that, because they had started talking about this movie and like what it meant in the history of horror. But then I didn't get very far because I was really distracted when I was listening to it. So once I figure out the name of that, I would love to bring that onto the podcast if it's a good book overall.
All right. Well, is that it for the themes we had?
I think
we nailed it. My big one, you went in depth. My big one, I can't. Mine really does revolve around just, I guess, because he created the zombie, I have to go to that metaphorical idea for that monster. And I think he does make a good point that I think that's something that's missing in a lot of modern zombie, is the idea. Especially, I love The Last of Us. I love the game, but every zombie movie ends up being about how like humans are bad and they're the real monster.
Which,
that's
like
been the big theme.
But
that theme's fun, but like, let's not forget like that it starts with death. And I think that some zombie movies would benefit from going back.
Truly, I think we could have a whole college course
on zombies,
where every single person has a different thesis for this movie.
Oh, for just this movie? You could teach a class just using this movie.
Yeah.
I've said that you could teach a class just using Spider-Man 2 though as well. So
I don't know if you could get a whole class out of it. You could get a class period,
I could get
but not like an entire course.
I could get an entire course of Spider-Man 2.
Love that. I think a lot of the internet will disagree with you.
No, they won't, dude. I'm talking Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2. You could.
I posted something
the
about
syllabus.
I could. I mean, you could basically do every scene and do a class on every scene in that movie.
Another creator messaged us after our horror and non-horror episode and was like, really bold take that Spider-Man 2 is the best superhero movie ever. And
it is not that bold of a take. That's like a pretty like
all right,
normie
fight 'em,
take.
babe.
No, I feel like that is like a lot of people have said that for a long time, not just me.
I was saying it for much longer than you, so
I know I had to relearn.
Give me the pat on the back, please.
Yeah, I actually just watched the Dark Knight series for the first time, and it was incredible.
You enjoyed? They're good.
Yeah,
they're no Spider-Man 2 though.
I don't think I've seen Spider-Man 2.
You should
I don't
watch.
Really watch superheroes.
Well, go back and watch Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 from the 2000s. And
I think what's interesting, I can understand like if you don't like superhero movies at all, then like watching The Dark Knight specifically would really appeal. I could see watching The Batman, and that would really appeal even if you don't like superheroes. And I do think that the Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy, especially the third one, has a lot more like campiness than the ones I just listed, but I think the filmmaking, the casting, the effects, the everything about them makes them just like such a standout in the genre.
Also, Sam Raimi's a horror director, so it was interesting to have him do those movies.
Yeah,
and
like,
he like used some of his horror like chops.
My brother and I were so young, and we saw Spider-Man 2 in the theaters with my dad, and my dad was so locked in that when my brother started crying, I had to take him out into the hallway, except I was very little, so I should not have been doing that. And then down the road, we had this on DVD, and I went to watch it because when I was also probably just still too young to be watching the movie, period. And I went to put it on by myself, and my brother got so mad at me that he split my DVD in half. Because this movie scared him so much.
Gosh.
Which, Erica, it's not that scary, but like there is, like you could tell it's made by a horror director in the way some of the scenes are filmed.
Well, okay.
Anyway, we got to talk about
another really good movie, which is Night of the Living Dead.
I think we're ready for
done.
ratings.
We're ready. No, we got to do our favorite scenes.
Oh, you're so right, Bessie.
Favorite scenes. All right. Sarah, what was your favorite scene?
I liked post-car explosion. I don't know if you can count that as one scene. But I liked seeing all of the reactions, like the guy looking from between the wood, looking out of the house, and then Ben looking from where he was. I just thought it was so cool to really showcase the characters, and again, just genuinely beautiful with how it looked.
That's a good pick. All right, Erica, what about you?
I feel like I'm going to go with like a cliche one, but it's definitely when you go into the basement and Karen's eating her dad.
Love that moment.
That scene is also so interesting how they like change the sound all of a sudden when mom like sees it.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe supposed to portray her like not believing what she's seeing. It's like this like crazy shocking moment for her. You know what I'm talking about? How it's like gets like real distorted and kind of like synthy sounding.
Yeah.
Yes, especially because as Karen goes after her mom afterwards, you can tell that her mom is like, what do I do in this situation? Like, I can't hurt my child. She's just kind of like in shock.
Yeah, it always like freaks me out, like thinking about if this kind of thing ever happened and then your loved one dies and then you're like, well,
gotta shoot him in the head.
I don't want to shoot my husband. But also, I'll die if I don't shoot my husband. So what does one do? Also, like, that's not really my husband anymore, but it is his body. And how do you separate, like, their soul kind
We're
of
back to
from
fear
their
of
body?
death again.
Anyway.
We're very much back in fear of death themes. And what do we do with the body? We have to
David and I have an agreement.
David
and I have an agreement. If we're zombies, if we're something dangerous, just off us.
Oh, for sure. Matt and I have always said, like, if we knew that, like, nuclear attack was coming or a volcano exploded, like, right next to us or something, we're just chilling in or just, like, offing each other together.
Whoa, I don't know if I agreed to that.
Maybe I agreed to that. But we're just like...
Hanna took it a step further.
We're just, like, straight chilling. My brother's always like, where are you going to go for the bunker? And I'm like, nah, dog, I'm out.
I'll throw some TV on.
Yeah, like we're just gonna watch a movie. Anyway, my favorite
pop some champagne.
Literally. My favorite scenes, I do just love they're coming to get you, Barbara, and then they get her. I just think that's like so funny. And then when he gets shot at the end through like the credits, like them showing that they're picking up the bodies, I think is like the most emotionally impactful.
That scene makes me feel like I want to throw up. Not from being grossed out, just from my stomach feels tight when I think about him getting shot and then just the movie ends.
Fair enough.
Like, it's good. It's a good thing. It's just like, it's crazy.
So tell us your favorite scene, Matt.
I have to say, I think anytime the camera is outside the house, just showing like 5 or 6 ghouls, like just wandering about trying to get there. I love that every time it happens. Like every establishing shot, just with like naked people walking around or eating something. I don't know what it is. I think it really just like adds to that dread and just keeps reminding me of the threat. So I'm picking anytime that happens as my favorite scene.
All right, let's move into ratings because this episode is already long as hell.
Oh, it's very long. Well, we have lots of fun things to say.
There is so much to say. We could have done, again, like we said, a multi-part series on this. So, Matt, give us your rating.
Oh, my rating?
Yep.
Okay, well,
I know what it is.
I said before, I think one of the best horror movies of all time, definitely most important horror movies of all time. And I will say it's the best zombie movie. We never did. Oh no, I need to say we never did any better. unfortunately. I'd be curious your opinions on this, but it's a 10 out of 10 for me. Just it's one, important, and two, it's so much fun.
Erica?
I would say 8 out of 10, which my 9s and 10s of movies are like very rare. So this is like highly rated for me.
Hell yeah.
I feel the same way. I won't give a 10. I don't think I've ever given a 10 on this podcast. So
is it the best zombie movie you've seen?
I think it might be the only zombie.
Hey, that counts. That counts. We count those.
That counts, yeah.
1 of 1, baby.
Yes.
I'm asking everybody that. You have to answer that with your rating if it's the best zombie movie.
All right, Sarah?
I think it's a 9 because it is really culturally significant and I genuinely enjoyed it. It's withstood the test of time, but I can't give anything a 10 just out of, I don't know, principle.
Okay, so this is a Sarah 10.
I don't know if it's the best zombie movie I've ever seen. I guess it is. I'm trying to think of other ones like World War Z or whatever. But yeah, I guess it is the best zombie movie I've ever seen if the other ones can't even come to mind.
I am also going to give it a 9 out of 10, basically for the same reasons that Sarah did. We all know my 10s are very selective, and I think it's not a 9-point decimal just because I still have another zombie movie coming to mind that I love. I think this is a better made movie than the one I'm going to say, but I have like a serious passion for Train to Busan, which I knew Matt knew I was going to say.
I love that movie.
I love
do think it's really good. It's probably the second best zombie movie I've seen.
It scares me more. Yeah, but they're both like incredible. I'd probably only give that a 9 too. So I don't know.
Fine, I accept that as your favorite zombie movie, but
this is like right there, and everything else is like so much worse, I would say.
Well, I'm so happy everyone liked it, especially because like it is old, and I know some people have issues. So I was getting stressed yesterday that you guys were going to hate it. And that I was going to have to, and that I was going to have to sit here and be like, "This is the best movie ever," and have to argue with everyone. So,
and then I'd stop being real life friends with you because you referred bad movie.
Yes, yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, and you could tell Matt loved it because he kept the conversation going for like an hour and 20 minutes.
And
so
I have friends out there that are like, I said, I don't watch old movies for these reasons, and I'm like, this is one that I feel like I have to recommend, and just be like, your mind will be blown. I hope.
All right, let's go, Jenna.
Yep. Yeah, Jenna's out there.
Watch it. All right. Well, we were so glad to have you guys on the pod. This is such a fun episode. So remind us again where you can find Haunted Atlas.
You can catch it on Tuesdays every other week, wherever you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and you can find us on social media at Haunted US.
And just a shout out, Sarah and Erica are also 2 of the 3 hosts of Paranormal in Pennsylvania. You've also met their co-host David on our show. So just wanted to throw that out there too, that they have 2 great shows for you to go listen to. Well, thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, this was so fun.
I'm glad we finally got you on, Erica. We found a movie for you.
Yeah, me too.
I know, isn't that great? No, and maybe we got to do the other Romero zombie movies then, if you know we can if we know you can handle those. So
yeah, honestly, that would be cool. One time though, someone jokingly recommended Monster House, which is like this cartoon movie. Yeah,
I'm scared of it.
And I was like, ooh. It turns out it's not really a scary movie. So honestly, getting more under my belt might be good.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre next.
A retroactive.
That came out the year after this, didn't it? Or did it come out in 1970?
I don't know, bitch.
That's crazy to think about that these movies are 2 years apart.
All right, well, let's wrap this shit up. I'm Hanna.
I'm Matt Hanna.
And we liked this movie. Goodbye.
Ghouls are cool.
Thank you for listening to Horror Hour with the Hannas. Make sure to listen to future episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you can find podcasts. You can follow us at Horror Hour with the Hannas on TikTok and Instagram for more content. If you like the podcast, please follow and leave a review on your favorite podcasting app. Happy hauntings!